Previously, Haruto was a former NEET who got reincarnated into a world of magic and fantasy. His bad luck followed as he got abandoned by his birth parents. Left all alone in the forest, Haruto got rescued by a noble warrior named Gold, and this how he found his new family. Now all grown up, Haruto is set to attend the Royal Academy. With him, as his attendant, is the Blizzard Dragon Lisa, in her more cuter female form. At the same time, he is growing more and more aware of his sister Charlotte's potential, both in terms of her strength and intelligence. The latter, as Haruto is informed, has decided along with Flay, Lisa, and the other knights to protect Haruto on his journey to the capital. As Haruto prepares to leave for the palace, Flay is distraught that he is taking Lisa with him instead of her. The latter, while excited to accompany her master, is still adjusting to hiding her horns and claws. Meanwhile, in the royal capital, Marianne excitedly informs Elias about Haruto's decision to come to the capital, associating this development with Elias' efforts to get a recommendation letter for him. Elias blushes and claims he only wishes to know why Haruto is as strong as he is. Their consequent back and forth is interrupted by the revelation that, in their school, a troubling offshoot of the state religion has developed into a cult known as the Church of Lucifera. Its adherents worship the devil and their influence is stretching through the kingdom, with calls of overthrowing the monarchy and creating instability. It is also believed that the Queen, Giselot, is the source of their funding. Linus contemplates that since the king and queen are on bad terms, it may be that Giselot is using the cult to destroy the king's empire. Meanwhile, Marianne declares that Haruto might be strong enough to resolve the brewing conflict. Suddenly, Giselot intrudes into their conversation and immediately starts choking her daughter Marianne, thinking she was staring at her collar. After scolding her, she orders Elias to keep an eye on Haruto and learn everything about the Black Knight from that brat, unaware that Haruto himself is the Black Knight. Once this ominous meeting ends, Elias gets anxious thinking that he's gotten Haruto into trouble. Haruto and Lisa enter a forest near the capital through a magical door he hid a while back. Once there, they witness a horse-drawn carriage being chased by a dangerous bison. Haruto contemplates what Char would think if he didn't rescue the carriage and immediately transforms into the Black Knight before easily fending off the bison and protecting the travelers. He heals a young white-haired lady who was attacked by the bison and is thanked both by her and a child. Declaring himself to be Shiba, the enforcer of justice, Haruto fixes the stagecoach and refuses to be paid for his duties. He then decides to take the bison back to its herd and feed him, receiving further respect for his actions by the people he has protected. Once the ordeal is over, Lisa broods over the white-haired lady, whom she sees as a little strange and suspicious. Finally, at the school orientation lined up with all the newcomers, a part of Haruto feels overwhelmed by the noble status of most of the students. His exhaustion reaches its peak once he finishes all the introductory documents, and even before they can settle into their lavish rooms. Haruto decides to reopen the magic door and return home for the day. At home, he requests Flay to make dinner for him, but is interrupted by Charlotte, who wishes to eat at a restaurant in the capital. Though Flay is initially reluctant, she very quickly turns to Char's side, leading Haruto to wonder how clever his sister's convincing skills are. Char then dresses Flay in a not too inconspicuous costume to conceal her demon-like features. Haruto uses his magic to make those features invisible, and then agrees to go to dinner with the rest. Once they re-enter the capital's town square, Charlotte is awed by the number of shops and people and buildings in the town. After having dinner, she lays out a map of the capital, delegating each region to each person in order to survey the geography of the capital. To Haruto's surprise, Char responds by telling him that it's a contingency measure to ensure that the enemy does not have a geographical advantage. Once Flay and Lisa separate, Char says she wants to explore the eastern quarters of the capital with Haruto. To the latter's bewilderment, she calls this a date. While initially reddened with blush and embarrassment, Haruto immediately is reminded that this is his younger sister, who probably has no idea what a date is. Still, having no prior experience of dating himself, he decides to play along and treats it as a date as well. He spends his money buying Chart earrings and watches her gleefully looking at the nearby town canals. Next to a fountain in the center of the eastern quarters, the blissful Charlotte accidentally bumps into the white-haired lady Haruto had rescued from the bison. Both apologize to each other, but the lady seems to recognize the high emanating mana from Haruto. In an attempt to conceal the identity of the Black Knight, Haruto lies about his mana rating, reassuring the lady of her incorrect assumptions. Fortunately for him, she leaves in a hurry. But what intrigues Haruto is the fact that both Lisa and Charlotte point towards that lady, expressing concern that something feels wrong about her. Before the entrance ceremony for school begins, Haruto is asked to take a proficiency exam. As he enters the school, he is met by an official who takes him through a massive classroom. This extroverted environment, though the class is completely empty, is enough to overwhelm and crush the shy Haruto. He decides he needs to fail this exam because such an environment would drain the life out of him in no time. Presented with the exam paper, he tries his hardest to answer every question incorrectly. However, once the sections on barrier and ancient magic come up, he can't help but let his interest run loose, eventually ending up answering most of the paper without thinking. Once he reluctantly submits it, he is asked to enter a hall where his mana will be tested as part of school policy, and this directly frightens him since he doesn't want to reveal the true nature of his mana. However, he simply decides to present himself as weak as possible. Haruto is then introduced to a short, brown-haired doctor named Tiara, who analyzes his figure with intense detail. She introduces herself as a researcher of ancient magic and an extremely influential figure in the school. The professor is also very eccentric and takes a strong liking to the exuberance with which Haruto answers her questions and the excitement with which he takes her threat of removing him from school at the slightest notice. Her interest in him reaches spectacular heights when Haruto accidentally uses too much magic and ends up breaking the Mio crystal, a precious school item. As the professor excitedly reads over his exam, complimenting his boldness and his advanced knowledge of ancient magic, Haruto realizes that it was her work on ancient magic he used to read in his free time. The impression he makes is so positive that she decides to take him under her wing, requesting him to spend 5 years researching ancient magic with her. Haruto clear-cut declines this offer, much to Tiara's sadness, and leaves swearing that he will never make such a good impression ever again. After making a third duplicate with no magic powers and all the memories of the previous duplicates, Haruto C goes off to the school hoping to get finished as early as possible. After getting done with all his work, Haruto runs into Shneidel, the vice president of the academy, who stops him and someone else in their tracks. This someone else turns out to be the white-haired lady Haruto had run into twice on his first day in the capital. Shneidel orders her to salute him when he walks by, and her genuine ignorance aggravates him further. Haruto is unknowingly involved in the conflict when Shneidel orders him to explain to her why he deserves to be saluted. With his social anxiety kicking in, the former pretends to be in pain and tries to run away. The vice president sees this as a mockery that is deserving of punishment. When Haruto is least expecting it, he is immediately and without warning attacked by Schneidel's bomb magic attacks. Since the defensive barrier installed by the original Haruto leads to no injuries, Schneidel gets even angrier and creates numerous magic attacks which intend to kill Haruto and the white-haired girl. The fact that this first-year student is walking off such strong magic attacks so easily riles him up even more, and despite pleas from his friends to stop, Schneidel continues to develop his attack. At this point, Haruto also realizes that, though his communication skills are bad, the girl he's with has even worse skills. While confronted with this attack, she spends her time contemplating what she did wrong and why she needed to salute the BPE. Fortunately, using only his gun, Haruto C preempts the bombs, causing a massive explosion which severely injures Schneidel and damages school infrastructure. Without thinking, he runs back home to inform the original Haruto of these developments. The fact that magic is being used so openly on school grounds worries him greatly. Furthermore, he realizes that the damage he has caused to such a big personality in the school would not go unnoticed, and this puts a dent on his plans to leave as soon as possible. The next day, Haruto is challenged to a noble duel by the vice president. Though he initially rejects, Haruto has no way of getting out of this. Haruto notices through his surveillance barrier that the white-haired girl, whose name still remains unknown, has gone out to visit Schneidel's house, with the hope of calling off the duel. She argues that the entire responsibility for the conflict lies with her, but Schneidel, surrounded by a cohort of other students and maids, is unwilling to let her go or call off the duel until and unless she dances without her clothes in front of them. With no other option in front of her, she decides to strip herself off of any clothes and is treated to the disgusting laughs and remarks of the numerous people around her. Watching this harrowing sight unfold, Haruto decides to don his black knight costume and save her from getting sexually harassed. Once he arrives, he not only gets the girl to safety, but also puts a vice block potion on Schneidel, rendering him unable to use his magic without hurting himself intensely. Schneidel justifies his actions by claiming that it is the duty of an upperclassman to guide his juniors. However, Shiba, the enforcer of justice, calls him an exploiter who uses his position of power for private gains. He condemns Schneidel for his sexual harassment and orders him to call off the duel he has made with Haruto, calling it pure tyranny. Once he leaves, Schneidel's friends try to ward off the curse through healing potions, but it ends up hurting him even more. With no solution in sight, he writhes in agony and vows vengeance against Shiva. The end, for now.